Stunners in Manchester. Today we're at the National Football Museum to speak with Michael Browne about his exhibition. From 𝐖𝐢𝐧 to Marseille is a collection of fine art pieces which underline the relationship between sports and modern society. The collection has been commissioned by Eric Cantona and features specially chosen themes which have influenced both his life and Michael Browne's. If I got it right, it was this piece that kick-started your relationship with Eric.
Yeah, in 1996 I started it. Well, I wrote a letter to his family, and they kind of, him and his family at the time, to do a St. Sebastian image because of his, after the Kung Fu kick he did at United. So I wanted to show the persecuted figure in a biblical scene, but it didn't work. It didn't quite. I got a letter back after a while. It didn't quite. Just said no, thank you, wasn't interested. So I thought I'll do this one instead. On my own, I started on my own, got some backing, and I went to work in a pub, a large bar in Salford. Started this huge painting on site, and within 2 weeks I came in to look at what I was doing, and then he realised that it was a good picture. He knew who I was, and then decided he was going, he wanted to be, be part of it. I said, would he be posed for the work? He said, yeah, of course he'd pose the work. He said his dad's an artist as well. So I then. We arranged for a couple of weeks later, came back and posed for this picture in these positions. Within about 6 weeks, he got other players at United because they needed them as well. Some other players, they wasn't sure who, but he suggested the younger players coming through, so we did that. And I went to the Cliff training ground and photographed them as well. In these poses, well, not quite with Gary Neville like that, but we were seated, just got the headshots. Then I worked on the painting there for 10 months. Then it was unveiled at Manchester Art Gallery within about 6 weeks' notice of doing it. The curator there said, let's unveil it here. Did a press conference, press call with private view. So Alex Ferguson attended, lots of others, Eric came, and that was it. And the painting was on display, it was all over the media in '97. And
then you kind of split for nearly 2 decades. But then it was Eric who showed the initiative and commissioned this to be created.
Sort of, yeah, that's right. So what it was is then, after I did this work, it was at the National Gallery in London, National Portrait Gallery, with Picasso, Salvador Dali, Lucian Freud, other famous artworks, best portraits of the last century that were voted for, So that was for '97. So Eric loaned it again for that. And then that was in 2001. And then I hadn't seen him for a while, odds and ends, discussions of things, but then we kind of got together again I was in a sticky situation in Rome in 2016 on Brexit Day, had to come back. I had nowhere to live, I was homeless for a while, it was really weird. So, but I saw Eric at Christmas and in an event when he was here touring, so we got to meet him again, we had a quick chat, caught up on old work and things and ideas, and he sort of said he likes my approach, political approach. So he was into this as well, the themes, so we said let's do a project together. So we suggested a number of plays that were originally going to be for 2 years, 4 players, 4 sportsmen. And then we started that way with this itinerary to have an exhibition after 2 years. But then COVID struck, other issues happened. So then we just carried on working, just ploughing on with more projects and more people.
Do you still follow the game these days?
Yeah, keenly, because I'm a Red, of course, but it's just don't get so many games as I like to anymore. But I'm interested in the politics as Eric is, with all the international themes going on and human rights, agendas, suppression, oppression, LGBTQ, all these other issues that are going on in life that are all featured in these paintings. So, that's my focus as well. And sport and politics kind of guide these things in because you can't disassociate the two.
Many say that football is not quite the same anymore, that the romance is that the game is becoming way too much about stats and numbers, both statistical and financial. And how do you still manage to find beauty in this modern game?
As you said, there's some players who are still mavericks, and I suppose some clubs still try to have a setup where you do have creativity outlets while this game's structured, especially in attack. You want creativity outlets, don't you? But I think you're right with all the money and the one goal of success, because these paintings are about the combination of one or two two alternatives. When you've got a one pyramidical approach to being the best, you constrict your freedoms in doing so, and your freedoms are constricted as a result of that, of being number one. And therefore you get these kind of situations in life where in all these paintings there's binary dependencies, there's two elements going on between different alternatives that flow and to and fro, and you've got fluidity in life where you've got choices and balances and changes of minds and creativity where it comes from. But have one polar viewer being at the number one, you eventually strangle the life out of something, whether it's dictatorships, even in football, in methods and structures in a game, they can become so constraining. They're normally designed to make you be more creative, more creativity, but sometimes you'll find that the shackles are on when you kind of pin something down too much. And as you say, there's traditional football fans and sports fans who like the not knowing, and grassroots level you get lots more there for the love of the game and the creativity and events. And then when the club's so big, it comes like, how do we stay at number one? How do we maintain our position? And therefore you can sell out, and marginal gains, everything is so few elements. But I suppose in the end of it all, you've got to find players who will open these games up as well.
Sends two defenders. Leclerc. Cantona. Oh, back to his best. Eric Cantona is back.
If, let's say, you had to pick one of the modern day athletes and put it in the center of a similar work these days, do you have any candidates whatsoever?
I'm looking for people all the time, but obviously there's people in the in the Middle East and the Far East who have struggles with things in life and their freedoms, and I'd like to focus on some of them as well. Obviously there's a lot of things going on in America at the moment, but there's no one individual yet that I'm trying to. There's a few, because this is going to go on and on as an idea, as a concept. It's a growing movement, I think, with validation, and because you're always going to get football rising to compete with politics, because with politics is imposing on sports, whatever form, so you're going to always get sports counteracting with politics and ruling, governance, etc. And obviously these situations in, environment and in Ukraine as well. Of course, I don't want many people very politically active at the moment, obviously, in sports, but the news. But this is a theme as well that is open, because it's all part of the ongoing debate about constrictions and limiting freedoms and being overruled by others. At any cost. As I say, this polarity comes to aggressiveness in the end as well.
It was actually one of the first things that me and Paulina have discussed after we visited first. We went out of the museum and I asked her, who do you think can be this person in the center of the picture among Ukrainian athletes? We didn't come down to just one name, because we think, we simply lack one at the moment, even though athletes have proven to be great patriots in this particular situation and doing very, very much for the benefit of the country in order to bring the victory closer. But it's due to their past that they will never make it to one of these pictures.
Yeah, because it's been suppressed for so long, and also it takes a lot of bravery to stand up against authority, and whether you survive it or not is another question, isn't it? So some of these people have survived it by standing up to things they've not liked in the country, or being suppressed to such a degree they've kind of, or they see the hypocrisy of the politics at the time as well, or they don't like to behave like hypocrites, so they refuse to behave in a certain way, or they don't like family and racial insults, so they respond regardless of the cost.
That was one of the things that wouldn't leave my mind after the first visit here, is the fact how meticulously you have highlighted this correlation between sports and politics, because a lot of higher management in sports these days, take for example FIFA's president Gianni Infantino or International Olympics Committee Thomas Bach, they do say these silly things out loud at press conferences that sports should not be mixed with politics. Well, sports is politics. It's, in a nutshell, it's people competing against each other whose flag is more superior.
Yeah, all politics is based on allocation.
Yeah.
You've got to negotiate allocations, whether it's allocating land, rights, proportion of incomes, danger, you know, what we conceive as harmful to people of underage or elderly, or, you know, it's how you allocate resources, how you allocate help, medicine. It's all about allocation. And a lot of the individuality of a country is about its own culture, historical culture. So if some get a grip on their own culture and hold on to it like that, to such a degree, that is a one, and that again is a disablement. It's an identity of the culture and the country, whether it's Chinese or Russian or Ukrainian. That historical identity, you have that, and so, well, we're not having them in here, we're not having that in here, we're not having him in here because doesn't represent what we want to be as a tribe behaves like. So what we get is, you know, these traditions that are upheld, and churches, when they say we're not having that in here, we're not having them in here in the church, it's a kind of upholding that. They want to uphold their history, but a lot of this history has been developed by colonialisation as well, and suppressing other people who wanted their own identities, and we swept them away, imposed Christianity or different kinds of religion on top of those people in a massive superpower method of ruling over these, you know, over everybody. So yeah, politics all intertwined. So when, and also I think what the governing bodies are trying to say is they want to keep hold of the coffers, so they stay away from politics. So if you like with TV as well, no politics on. You know, if you try to make a political documentary, then what happens is it can marginalise audiences, and you lose income, and you stop bombs on seats and eyeballs on TV screens. So as a consequence, you they're thinking about that, the wallet first, exactly, and not the ethics.
Today I feel Qatari. Today I feel gay.
Купили 2 принти найпопулярнішої роботи Майкла. Підпишемо їх і одну обов'язково розіграємо, тому дивіться відео до кінця. Corner over there.
Least popular.
Would you say so? Because I noticed, I've been here, it's my 3rd time here, and I noticed, especially the youngsters, they normally would approach, well, this one, for example, and they would just play the guessing game, you know? Oh, there's Neymar, and there's Ronaldinho, and there's Rooney. But over there, there's nobody to call for them, you know?
Yeah, because some people are very moved by this one, especially some Americans as well, I've noticed, because of the statements it makes is quite strong. It's not necessarily overtly sports, but it has links to with the Black Panthers.
I would like to read a quote from that plaque over there. Unlike the other works, no figure is presented as a savior, as no one is able to challenge the 3 puppet masters. Really made me think, this one. I kept asking myself for days, what is it that we could bring to the table in order to have a little less of this, which is being pictured in the center of the work here, and to have a little more of these glorious moments that fill this part of the room.
Remember, each one of them's got a downside. Every one of them's got something that they're fighting against.
Yeah.
That's probably more negative than some of the others because it's prophetic in some ways, or in my mind it is. So, what the important feature of it is, it's like a witness to an event, and as you can see, and it is the painting based on the Black Panthers movement, but I've extended it to human rights and neglect, and also the price of power on the environment. So these are figureheads, they're not necessarily the exact people, it's a symbol of counteractive powers who are on this upper level of life, navigating their way to be number one, like in the throne of a church, like in the throne of a palace, number one. And that scenario with that competition comes at a cost to all those below. They say that they're serving those people who are their population and their citizens and subjects, but a lot of the time they're filling their own pockets as well. As that binary dependency is very top focused, and it's not so much in the interest of you until you get lung cancer from smoking, or all your addictions start affecting you pretty badly, and you sort of say, well, it's his fault, it's their fault up there. So, but in this case it shows an ocean of trash and destruction of the environment, children playing still oblivious to what's going on. It's like selling out on nature. So we've got the 30 pieces of silver, So instead of it being a biblical scene from Jesus' life, it's a scene of nature, selling out on nature, not just selling out on Jesus. So I use that theme, the metaphor, based on a painting by 𝐬𝐢𝐬𝐿 of the Raft of Medusa, which is in the Louvre.
Yeah, yeah.
And I use that painting as a setting of a life raft that's falling to bits in an ocean of trash. And these guys are manipulating the scene and, you know, aware of what's going on, because these are figureheads who've got a lot of information about them, but we don't really, what we're going to do about it is secondary to their own personal wealth. That wood is 5,000-year-old bog wood, so that's turned into a frame. So again, it's historical relevance before Christianity about the aged and the reusing of the aged items.
Some people would say that education probably is the cure to have a little less of that, because once you keep yourself educated on the matter, it's way harder for them to fool you, to keep you in oblivion. Or there was a movement in the 60s who thought love was the answer. Well, it certainly does not apply as long as it's their world, right?
Yeah, it's like liberty. Who's liberty?
Yeah, exactly.
It's who it suits, always in power have their definitions, and how far you're subservient to the person you're dealing with, or the people you're dealing with, is the measure of how imbalanced things become. And we can see now the corporations are going like that, and the poverty quantity is going like that. So the proportions are too great, and that's where you get your revolutions and you get your uprisings, because people are kind of discontent, that won't tolerate this difference, this huge difference anymore between, you know, what's fair and what's right, and you can be blindfolded by all this, by consumerism, and that's a kind of element of consumerism in there, with all the bits of computerware and toys and things that people want, goods, and that keeps us kind of calm, going around the Arndale centres, shopping, occupying yourselves with games, keeps you happy, and people will sort of say, well, that's where I want to live, but there's lots of choices in life, but as long as people are happy with their addictions, and someone at the top is spinning the till and turning out, bringing in more money, and then obviously there's environments coming on us now with a bang, and that's self-evident with it's a self-evident truth with you know, when you overreach, when you overstretch your desires, something will come back and say, hold on, that's enough. Nature has its way of snuffing these things out, and brothers turn against brothers, hitting his fellow man with a jawbone of you know, from the Bible, and it seems like that. There's even images of Van Gogh, scenes of potato pickers, you know, the poor with bent over backs, picking out, ploughing fields and stuff, surviving, while others, you know, they're competing for power and in suits. Because uniforms can be quite a negative thing, you know, military uniforms in particular, as well as black suits. You know, these are symbols of organisation and power and control, and the you know, an identity. But what, you know, what they stand for. Look at, you know, as you say, the age of hippies and things, and free love and all that. But at the same time, you got to do some work. You got to have a way of life. You've got to balance this out between effort and rewards. Instead of, you know, I'm not going to do anything for anybody, I'm going to be just me. There's a bit of too much of that. Again, is you can tell when it's going wrong.
With what you just said about the uniform being a negative thing in that context, athletes wear a uniform as well, but can it be seen almost as the opposite to the black suit and tie?
Well, I mean, you know, obviously you've got all kinds of, you know, you've got funeral outfits in all black, you've got symbolic clothing and outfits for ceremonies, you've got teams that you have to have an identity, you know, that separates you from one from the other. But in the game, the uniform in a game is, you know, when the game ends, you can start another game next week. When you've got, you know, when you've got peaceful counter activities. But when you've got uniforms that impose power, that sort of say, if you cross that line, that's you gone, you're in prison, you're dead, you're shot. Those uniforms that send down these kinds of powers are kind of, you know, very there's a lot of element of control. You need to recognise people by uniform, by their identity. Let's say it's a fireman, a policeman, etc. And a sportsman, it gives you a kind of what you're supporting. Even a flag is, to some degree, your uniform. But in that, it's a very broad term because you've got so much freedom in what you identify as and how you express yourself with, with your clothing, with your sports kit, etc.
There was a great example just recently in the World Cup final when the two uniforms collided. You might remember when Messi was raising his World Cup, he was being presented another type of uniform, a cultural one. What's your take on this approach?
The 𝐵𝐡𝐶.
Yeah, the 𝐵𝐡𝐶.
Cloak.
Yeah,
𝐵𝐡𝐶.
yeah.
I didn't like it. I thought it was hypocritical, but I could see the. I know that I think Messi's quite religious, but I think what's going on there is this is political again by putting the drape, because you sort of say, well, this is our religious ceremonial robe as well, our cultural robe as well, and we draped it on him like that, and it's like, well, how would you say no in a given moment without thinking it through in advance? So maybe he was caught off guard, but at the same time, because I know he says he's religious, so maybe there's an affinity between his kind of, his religion and Islamic faiths, and the two are kind of united on the podium sort of thing. Maybe it's a representation of that, but at the same, and again, that's like, it can be a misdemeanor about, what the message is, what it's trying to say to the broader public, based, you get where you are based on faiths, etc. There's all sorts of mixed messages coming up, but I thought it was a bit crude, and it looks premeditated in some way, and it was only him wearing it, and I was also quite surprised, by reaction at the time. I thought that left a bit of a distaste, because again, what it shows again is the politics encompassing into the sport on the highest level, and yet at the same time, there was LGBTQ supporters who couldn't wear shirts or flags anywhere near the stadiums in Qatar because of the issues of religion and gender rights, etc. So that book told me of the hypocrisy whereby you can't deny them, so why should you grant yourself? And this, is what anyone would say: if you don't do others what you wouldn't do to yourself, etc. There's a hypocrisy going on in all manner of these events, no matter how high up the ladder you go. And because it's when it suits you, you're okay, and when it doesn't suit you, you're not okay. And this, when it suits you, is very much cultural, nowadays, and not necessarily based on humanity and freedom. It's more based on cultures.
Yeah. To elaborate even further on that particular moment, our president approached FIFA before the World Cup final about making a statement calling for peace, just a general statement to address the billions in audience. He was declined. And then at the end of the match, at the award ceremony, there was the most pure political statement that could have been possibly made with the 𝐵𝐡𝐶. Yeah, well, FIFA is being rightfully so considered to be a very hypocritical organization. And now with the talk of the Super League just piling up each year more and more, it's funny how a lot of people begin to see a healthy alternative in what is not healthy alternative as well. We need to change the current way of operation within the football's largest organization.
Top down.
Yeah. You know how they say, I don't know if you have the same expression, but fish begins to rot from its head. And it's literally what's happening with the football these days, I think.
Yeah, it goes wrong at the top when they get such hold for too long. That's why, even in this gallery, if I was here for beyond the term time I've got, and I sort of say I'm staying here, it would start to stink. If they deny the people the rights and they're just taking turns, and that's what I mean about the games can start again next week instead of eliminating other options, because those people at the top have it their way, have their pattern of thinking, and don't like any alternative methods of thinking because they don't want to give up their top seat at the table. And as a consequence of that, you get these powers there that are there so long, they won't budge, and people start to get, handcuffed by it all eventually, constricted by it all. Yeah. So as you said, even in the sports bodies, it's top of the pyramid, you're going to get the same thing because they're not listening to, what the public are after as well, and what choices there are and representations there are. But I get it totally with the, you know, when you mention about the rights and the declined statement about peace, and they wouldn't, you know, it's kind of, it's the same thing whether it's FIFA or UEFA. If they're afraid of politics, it's not because people seem to just want to be entertained and don't want to hear any knowledge or much information. Like television, people coming here, you know, this museum exhibition was about, you know, you wouldn't normally be able to say so many political things, but I have done. And some people come in here just to be entertained by the scale of it. Oh, it looks great, it's colourful, it's big, it's nice, it's who's he, cup and saucer language and themes. But behind it, I've fed in lots of themes that are just as important as the visuality, because I work on many levels between the visual effects, the history, the hypocrisy, the cultures, the conflicts, and they're all running through the paintings simultaneously. So people can look at them for longer, not just what a beautiful spectacle, and then, but they can start to dig in and see more over time and pick out more things and then walk away with more in here, and not just a hit.
Yeah, a temporary entertainment. Well, it was in my case similar. I walked out of the room discovering few names, and I came back home, I did some research, and I learned something. I learned that there were, well, Carlos Caselli, for example. I haven't heard about the incident with Pinochet. Now I know, I'm pretty sure that hundreds, if not thousands of people have left this room.
Yeah, some people have been, you know, upset because things have hit home, you know, especially in America as well. They've seen things that said that's true. They've, you know, some men who in the 50s and 60s have had a tear in their eye, come over and said thank you, and I see it. Even with Martin Glickman there, he was Jewish runner, couldn't perform in the Berlin Olympics because he was Jewish. And yet I remembered him, I put him in here, and Americans said thank you for seeing, you know, for showing him, because he couldn't participate in the Olympics in Berlin, and he couldn't raise a trophy, he was due to run. So America had its own issues with the black population, the Germans had their issues with the Jewish people, but I've remembered it, and I've included things that wouldn't normally be obvious, so he was very grateful that he's come all the way to the UK and spotted that. There's people in Chile who've seen this story here, who didn't think for in a million years who would see me, someone from Moss Side, painting about Chilean history. But Eric's, you know, fed me the basics of this guy, of Carlos Caselli and other people here. So I said, do him. And I said, yeah, I'll do the research and I'll look them all up, and I've dug in and dug out the country's history. And it's like a portrait of a country at any given moment. You know, and it shows all the paradoxes and conflicts going on at the same time. But even, I'm trying to get a documentary made as well, but the noise is, we can't focus too much on politics. We're going to lose bombs on the seats. It's got to be, you know, entertaining. We've got to find a way to. And I said, well, how do we do that? Because it's loaded with information as well. You've got visuality, but sometimes you can do it emotionally. You look at Gary Lineker now in the BBC.
Exactly, yeah, I was going
so
to
he was going to say, you know, I know he's been with the BBC many years, and they kind of propped him up for many years and built his reputation further and consolidated it. But in his personal life, you know, it was his own Twitter feed, etc. And he has had a refugee living with him. But at the same time, it's when it comes to, you know, it comes to division, and people get afraid of politics being divisive, because it cuts through, you know, and causes hard lines quite quickly with people's opinions. So big corporations are afraid, and most corporations are, you know, if they're not in the entertainment industry, they don't care. They're not in the front of the picture so much because they like to hide. And let's say with oil, now we're on the Falklands. There's oil companies drilling north of the Falklands, and they're not, these people, these CEOs are not in the limelight. They're hidden. They don't care what you think, as long as they've got these powers and they're not entertainers. They can like manipulate or do what they want, and even have good leverage with governments. You know, they kind of can get a lot of power to do what they want without having any to answering back to anybody. But entertainment media does have to answer back to a lot of people, because you want, you know, bums on seats.
Yeah. Scan the QR code for the chance to win the Art of the Game print, hand-signed by Michael Browne. All funds will be distributed among emergency appeals in Ukraine. Eric said, I think, that this kind of moment that we might see over there with Black Panthers is absent in modern sports. It's being replaced either by complete apathy or by silent anger. Do you agree with him on that regard?
Yeah, because, you know, as he said, you know, when he did his presidential speech with the President's Award at that time, he made this remark about, you know, stating how using, you know, gods to flies, etc., and how science is working. It was all about, you know, for me, it was commenting how younger people are living in a bubble of self-protection and self-growth and self-accruement while things are going on in the outside world.
The recipient of the 2019 President's Award, what's going on through your mind right now?
As flies to wanton boys, we are for the gods. They kill us for the sport. Soon the science will not only be able to slow down the aging of the cells, soon the science will fix the cells to the state. And so we will become eternal. Only accidents, crimes, wars will still kill us. But unfortunately, crimes and wars will multiply. I love football.
This kind of thing is done not in ignorance, but unaware, because when the people who pay your wages, etc., the people who pay you to entertain, and you go on the pitch to entertain and you entertain the crowds, it's like that's all you're supposed to do and make a ton of money out of it and get your big car collections, etc. And he's probably saying, well, the world is bigger than just the pitch, it's what's going on outside, and what, you know, who can't participate in these sports and why can't they participate with these exclusive clubs. And so it is, you know, very much selfish and cut off in the sports world, where you've got huge income investments sometimes, and the, you know, all for the sake of entertainment, whereby people just be not think any further than, you know, like, because they've been working hard, or we can go out on a game on Sunday or Saturday, whatever, and wind down. At the same time, you know, a sportsman's going to be the best. He has to focus on his work as well. Yeah. And even so, Alex has said to me at one point, you know, let them focus on their ability first and then reach out further when they've got more experience later and have more interactive involvement with society later on when they've got more behind, more under the belt, more experiences. And I get that totally, because otherwise, you know, you become a bit dissenting, but you need the talents to, if you're going to be somebody who dissents, you've got to have the talent to back it up.
Yeah. Actually, right now, I think a lot of footballers are being praised for their involvement in whatever it might be outside the pitch, whether it's fashion, for example, because a lot of footballers seem to be very much interested in that. With Eric, for example, it was involvement in art, for which he was praised, well, not by everyone, because not everyone quite understood that. Leeds fans, for example, you've probably heard about the incident of him coming to Leeds, and it was like one of his first interviews. They name-picked him on in terms of like who his heroes were, and then the next day, you know, fans showed up on the training wearing Rambo costumes, not fully understanding that he was referring to Arthur Rimbaud. Well, yeah, overall I would think it's very beneficial to see a sports figure involved into something else, not just sports. Then his figure becomes quite boring socially, I think. And considering all the attention that they get from millions and millions, the bigger the name, the more people would follow it. It seems almost like a crime to me not to use this effect that you have on the masses. When it's a simple tweet from you, like in 𝐬𝐢𝐬𝐿𝐴𝐻 case, that can create this discussion in the society, such vital discussion in this particular moment.
I mean, it's probably, these influences are generational as well. They do get through. If you say it, you hear it. Even if you don't agree to it, you've heard it. And over time, different voices and different ears, younger ears will hear these things, and it will influence as time goes on. It changes the views because it's generations of people coming through. It's when some things, as I said, it's traditions and people not wanting to let go of their values that are often go back to their parents, grandparents, and so in their ways. We're not going to have that in this house, etc. You know, the tolerances can be quite limited. You know what I mean, regarding these aspects of life. But I think, yeah, it's true. I mean, fashion material industries.
Yeah, it's quite boring. I understand.
You know, I'm not sure. I mean, you know, we have so many. Look how many channels are out on TV with quiz shows, chat shows, guest events, things that are very glossy, you know, superficially glossy. To dumb myself down with.
Yeah. And you consider fashion to be one of them?
No, I mean, the top end is fashion is fantastic. I mean, but it's the message about bling. It's the aspect, right? It's the great American dream of bling. You know, I can have. Look what I've got. Look at the bling. Look at the car. Look at the watch. Look at that kind of fashion. What? Honestly, there's more to the brain than having all these accruing all these bits of materialism. And I just think, yeah, it's important for, you know, sportsmen to have an outside awareness and to be involved in more things that are not just based on fashion, but based on improving life. I mean, Rashford was doing it, and that was great because he brought attention to it and he's reached the government, you know, Parliament with it as well. And you don't have to do it all the time, but you can have moments of these things where you sort of make a statement to show your cards, say who you are and what you stand for.
Well, actually, our origins are. We had a retro football store in Kyiv when it was like a permanent exhibition of how great football shirts used to be in the 90s, because it is quite obvious the stylistic difference between the modern ones.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. We created this life for ourselves. We created this space for the people to come in and appreciate the beauty of it.
I've been looking at the military uniform of the current Ukraine armed forces because they were using the Russian military uniform for quite a few years, yeah, and they've changed it to their own now, which is a digital version. Pixelated uniform, yeah. And I know that it's quite French fashion for the French to wear military get-up. So one of the sons there is going to have the latest Ukrainian military uniform on. Yeah.
A reference?
Yeah. Because he is very highly, you know, active regarding Ukraine interest in this invasion. Is very, you know, Zelensky. So that if you look at that, that's the more modern. This is the digital. But
this is the official uniform of
now,
the Ukrainian army.
this one now, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the research I do. I have to, you know, capture all the stuff that's going on. Wasn't sure about this.
Yeah, that's a trident. That's our national symbol. It's one of the versions of it that military use because they use simplified versions, you know, very strict and direct. But our national symbol is this trident, right?
Right,
Correct
that trident. Can you send that to me? So we get a photo of that. Can you send it to me, that information, please?
Definitely. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. It's been good to chat to you and enlightening, and, you know, for me as well.